Voice?
Yes.
All right. So when I speak about such trees, I really honestly say what I think with all my background. And I have a pretty clear way of saying what I think. Some, probably not in Croatia, but in America, think I'm too direct, okay? I'm not very diplomatic. Diplomat is a curse word. Where I come from, if you call me a diplomat, you're insulting me. Because a diplomat is a person who lies. He doesn't say what he thinks. Anyway, when I speak about trees, some people think that I'm insulting them. Not really, not at all. I'm just saying what I see. And on the other hand, it's just me. I mean, if you don't like what I say, that's perfectly okay. I mean, it's my opinion, you have another opinion. I'm very tolerant with some people having another opinion. I'm not tolerant if you are arguing against my opinion, because I have a right to my opinion, okay? And nobody's going to question my opinion, okay? But you can have another one, that's okay.
Except your wife. You will kill the microphone.
I will kill the microphone. So anyway, if you, for example, offered me this tree, let's say for a demonstration, I would say, well, we don't want to screw this tree up in one afternoon. This is a longer term process. I can do over a couple of years, I can do something with that tree. Let's analyze it. Well, the first thing that springs to my mind is this foliage, which is extremely dense. Well, looks very, very much like many of these Japanese cultivars, which are done for decades, for many decades. And for bonsai purposes, this basically is too dense. There's way too much foliage on that tree to be a good bonsai. But that's a very good problem. That's the problem we want to have. We want to have so much foliage that we can take away at least 50% or more eventually. The question is, when do we? Not now. This is not finished. While it's so dense, it's growing very fast. In 15 years, the tree got to this dimension, which is very good. And if you continue in another 15 years, it will be like this. If you now do what I suggest you eventually do, thin out, take off 50, 60, 70% of that foliage, make the tree smaller, then it will stop really growing. It will stay more or less the way it is. It will grow very slowly, which is fine. I would eventually, if I have to stall it now, I would now thin it out. The next thing is about the structure of the tree. The nebari is interesting, fine. It is not really a classical nebari. You see this here? This is going like that. And in theory, it should be more even like that. It is extremely difficult to change a nebari radically. You can change a lot on the top, but the nebari is more or less what it is. In 10 years it will be bigger, but it will be still the same nebari. So you must start very, very early. As early as possible with a nebari, because later on you cannot change that. So we will somehow have to live with this nebari.
Walter, Alex, Walter.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So from a design, from an arts point of view, I immediately think of possibly, since I have to live with this nebari, which is not ideal, is it a good idea to build an ideal tree on top of it? Because the more ideal the bonsai will be, the more not ideal, the nebari will appear. You will see the radical difference. So it is an artistic trick to say, well, if you have an unnormal nebari, you make an unnormal bonsai, a one-sided bonsai. You get me what I'm saying?
Yes.
But so that's speaking about nebari. The bark is very good. Apparently, it is an original black pine, and grafted onto it is this variety called Lara, which I like very much. And you don't see really the difference.
Can you notice the place of spot of grafting?
I can see, but only because I know. If you told me. So normally I would say this is not a grafted tree normally, because well, I know it's grafted, but then it's a very good graft. We in general in bonsai we want to be very careful. We want to avoid grafting as far as possible, because grafting is causing a lot of problems, horticultural problems, and certainly artistic problems. If the graft unions don't fit together, if they have different bark, different habits of growing, you will have the fat trunk and the small trunk, or even worse, a fat trunk above and the small below, and all this sort of problems. And don't think that if you have a fault, then in time you can change that. The truth is, if the graft is a fault, in the future it will be worse, because there's a certain genetic reason why a graft union grows as it does, and that genetic reason will be around in 100 years. So if it's too thin underneath, it will be much thinner in the future. I mean, that's getting worse. So be careful about grafts. If you find something like this, where you absolutely don't see the graft, then you say, okay, that's fine. That's a professional graft. And it's done for bonsai purposes. So be careful when you go to a garden center and buy a garden center tree. They are usually not made for bonsai, because in the garden we don't care about this graft problem. But they usually have very, very bad grafts. Anyway, I hear it's not even necessary to graft it, because if you take a cutting, it probably could grow and grow on roots. So fine. Then the structure is of the tree. It has a very nice fat little trunk here. It has a movement already, and it has some movement up there, which I like. Most of these people, these trees, especially when they come from normal tree nurseries, are too straight, and this has movement. Okay, the overall structure of the tree is obviously a very traditional one, like they were done in a lot like this 40 years ago in Japan. Every tree looked like that. Okay, and there's a good reason for that, because for horticultural reasons, that's a very good way of growing a tree. The sun gets everywhere, okay, and you make this triangle not so much for artistic reasons, but more for horticultural reasons, and also for ease. I mean, if you have 10,000 trees in the nursery, and you have these boys running around as apprentices, they don't know much. You can tell them, just make a triangle, okay? It's everybody can make a triangle, okay? So it's an easy way of growing many, many trees like that. But that doesn't mean that from now on, all the trees always will have to be this triangle. It's just the start, the horticultural start. So it depends on what you want in the end. If in the end you want a perfect example of a very traditional Japanese-looking bonsai tree that people expect, especially, may I call them naive tourist people who don't know anything about bonsai, they have some idea, they want to see this. If that's your aim, then that's what you do. Okay, they think, oh, this is good, looks Japanese, it's good. Okay, if you are in Europe and you are a long-term bonsai artist, you may not just want to do something that looks Japanese. Hey, this is an international art form. It's not a craft, it's an art. Okay, and the art is European, and by the way, it's not invented by the Japanese, it's invented by the Chinese, and the Chinese are very serious about that. Okay, so why should I not make something that looks like a European tree? Yes, but this doesn't look like a European tree. This looks like a Japanese bonsai. But we can make it also look like a modern Japanese bonsai, which is what we also do in bonsai art in Europe and around the world. At this time now, the mainstream bonsai has grown away from this more traditional look to what I call modern bonsai, which has started about 20-25 years ago. Namely, Kimura started that. Very fat, powerful trees, a lot of movement, a lot of dead wood, and very small, compact, roundish sort of crowns. Okay, so can we make a modern bonsai off this? Would it be good? Yes, we can. So we can, for example, make the crown much smaller by for example, taking off this top, making a roundish top, bringing in here, so you see, cut off here, and bring these down. We'll close these Traditionally, we have these flat things where the eye goes through. Now, in modern bonsai, we close this. Okay, to make this a much more compact, roundish sort of crown with one strong branch, but not too long. Okay, so that is a possibility. Another wild one, which you will hate, is that I can take this one off. What I'm holding, you can remove totally, make a very different tree, a much more higher tree, not a compact, but a higher, more elegant tree. To say, well, this is more or less a sacrifice branch, which is very good for growing a fat trunk and a good nebari, and it had served the purpose, and you can cut it off. I know you're not going to do it, and maybe I wouldn't probably do it, but it's always a possibility. A lot of people buy these Japanese trees, white pines usually, which have these long lowest branch, and they think, oh, this looks so good Japanese. And the Japanese say, hey, this is just a sacrifice branch. It was always meant to be just grow and cut off one day. And people buy it because it has such a wonderful branch, and they're called coat hangers, you know, because you can hang your coat on that. Okay, so I kind of like these, but you must be aware what you're doing. You're taking something for which was meant to be cut off as a main feature of the tree. So this, you could treat this as if this were a sacrifice. Possible. Okay, you can, or you can say, no, hey, this has started as a traditional bonsai, and I want to improve it as a traditional bonsai. So, well, okay, I would still thin out, take off 50% of that green to make it a bit more transparent. Then I would make these flat sort of things a bit roundish, yeah, a bit roundish, and not all stiff like a Christmas tree. Might be a bit down, just a bit down and then up again. Okay, and I would, in the end, try to avoid this tip, even if it's so-called traditional triangle tip. I think the tree would look better with a roundish top, and that's very simple. You cut it off, it's no problem. Maybe you do make this shorter a bit. Okay, make this shorter a bit, and keep. But you basically, you don't try to make this into a modern tree or a natural tree. You just want to improve the traditional form. So that's very simple. In the long run, even this pot may be too powerful, too strong. You see, this trunk is about that thick, and the pot is about twice the size of the trunk. If you do that, if you have a pot which is that deep with a trunk like that, the tree looks young and weak, because compared to the pot, the tree is small. It's all relative. Now, the trick is simply get a pot which is much smaller, maybe half or even less, and then relative to the pot, the tree is fat. Also, the nebari will grow stronger. You have seen often that these trees, especially maples, trident maples, fat like this are in pots like that. And that's two tricks. One trick is to make the fat tree look even fatter because the pot is so flat. So that's an optical illusion. That's what I'm speaking about here. And the next thing is, if you cut off all the roots that go down, the tree must grow somewhere. It can only grow here. And that's exactly where we want it. That's where the nebari is going. So these roots are growing a lot more because you cut off all these. Now with a black pine, we cannot do what we do with a trident. A trident maple we take out of this pot, and with a saw, really honestly, with a big saw, electric saw, we cut off 50%. Okay, and then we do a bit, and then we put it back. If you do that with a black pine, you probably will die. So you have to do it stage-wise. So in the long run, I would suggest a flatter pot. If the pot is flatter, it can and should be a bit longer again, because you speak about a good harmony between pot and tree. Now, if you have a very big, powerful crown like this, even if you thin it out, it will still have a lot of optical weight. It's not physical weight, it's optical weight, what you see. You see a lot of green, a big green ball. Then you need a very strong contrast to that, which is a strong, powerful looking pot, okay? So the deep pot is powerful looking, but it would be probably better and more elegant if the pot was flat and longer, okay? And a bit dark, because the darker pot looks stronger than a light pot. Okay, we now had two options. One was to improve the traditional look, which is fine. And then you know I'm doing a traditional looking bonsai, and you're not going to tell me it doesn't look modern. I don't want a modern bonsai. Or you say, no, I want to win an award for a modern bonsai. Then this will not win an award, because at the moment in the big shows, the judges are the big artists, like you call them, all those Italians, Mark Invernizzi, Maurits Stenberger, Mark Nederlanders, and all these people. They are the judges, okay? And they judge what they do themselves. Always, it's normal. If you are an artist, you think what you're doing is the best, right? And they all do modern bonsai. So you have no chance with a traditional bonsai with these judges. They want to see a modern bonsai. If you want to win an award, make a modern bonsai. Now, how can we make a modern bonsai? Difficult. But we can. We can make it a lot more compact. We can bring this down. We close this, okay, and maybe we do some dead wood here. So get some drama. A bit of a problem with this type of plant is that it's not really fit for modern bonsai. Why is that? Modern bonsai is a drastic change in paradigm from traditional, which was quiet, nice, peaceful, no offense, okay? Modern bonsai wants to be exactly the opposite. They want to be aggressive, show off, be powerful, okay? And they don't want to be nice at all. They just want to be impress you deep. You say, wow, holy cow. So this is what you say in front of this modern bonsai. In front of this traditional bonsai, you say, good feeling, yeah. So anyway, since this is a tree from a garden center, and it's a very young tree. I mean, 15 years old is a very, very young for a bonsai tree. These modern collected trees are several hundred years old. Now, it's almost impossible to get this character that an old tree has. Okay, this character coming from a fat trunk, from a lot of movement, from a lot of dead wood, and looking very, very old and ancient, and having experienced a lot. Now, this tree doesn't have all that. So the problem with this kind of tree is to put this drama into it. It's possible, but very difficult. Or you say, well, if I want drama if I want a modern bonsai, you know what? This is no good. Then I go and get myself a piece of material which has the good qualities for that already. So that it's usually a collected tree. A collected tree will usually have a lot more character, a lot more possibilities. It's difficult because it's not styled for you to make a bonsai. Nature did it, so you have to somehow tame that wild tree. Where here it's the opposite. He's a very tamed. This is a house swine, okay? And you want to turn this house swine a bit into a wild boar to give it more drama. Whereas the other thing is collected trees are wild boars, but they're so wild that they're too wild, so you tame them a bit. You must be careful of over-taming a collected tree, of creating a house swine out of a wild boar. And here's the opposite. Now we can make more drama by doing a lot of deadwood, but this is, be careful. It will look on this tree like somebody did nice deadwood. Now, if you look at deadwood, you don't want to see that somebody did that. You must think immediately that this is always was there because nature did that. And that's very difficult. So forget it. Don't do it. By the way, the Japanese don't have any deadwood on black pines anyway. Traditionally, it's their culture. The black pine is a samurai, and the samurai has no wounds. And if you make a gin on a Japanese black pine, they will not like you. Now, we in Europe, of course, we are much more relaxed. We say, well, wild trees, especially pines, have a lot of deadwood. So this is a European tree. We are allowed to do with our trees what we want, okay? But I would still warn you to work with a lot of deadwood with these tamed garden trees. Okay, but I have not mentioned the option number 3. What can we also do with that? Can we not make this look like a natural black pine from Croatia? Yes, we can. Are we allowed to? Well, if you paint people, okay, do you have to paint them like they painted in Renaissance in 1520 in Italy, and only that way, or are you free to paint them the way you like it? Okay, does everybody has to look like a lady from Florence, or can you also paint people who look like Croatians here in Croatia? I think when we do a tree, we are not fixed to what the masters did in the old days. We can now do whatever we like to do. Now, for example, create something that looks like a wild Croatian tree. A bit of a problem is that this is not a wild Croatian tree. So you have to sort of simulate that. Well, a wild old tree does not have these branches like that. It has branches like that. Okay, it does not. Only when it's young it grows straight like that. When it's old it grows like that. It's contorted. So somehow we could try to do that. We for example, we don't want these flat things. We bring some branches down and make sort of almost like a cascade here. For example, here, take off the lowest branch and make this into a cascading sort of thing. Make cascades everywhere. I would have to show you what I mean if somebody lets me do it, but of course the owner will not let me do it on that tree. I can understand that. It's only, you see, if I got a tree like that, if you gave that to me, I would say, well, you have to be polite to the person who gives something to you. You cannot change it the next day because that's an insult. Okay? So you must keep it for a year as it is and make photographs and then slowly change it, okay? And I don't think I would drastically change it. I would say more or less this was started to be made as a traditional tree, and we leave it at that. But what does this tell us? In the future, if you want to do this in 20 years from now, still have this bonsai collection and sell some trees, maybe it's a good idea to now start doing some trees which are very different. because maybe in 20 years somebody will want these for a modern bonsai or a naturalistic bonsai. So for example, make spirals, make very wild moving trunks which looked very crazy, grotesque in the beginning, but then after many years can look very interesting, very dramatic. Okay, where you can then peel the bark and make dead with it, like they do with the junipers. You know, all these little junipers, like that. Okay, you can do that with pines too, and you will find people who like that. And it's more. It has two sides. People buy bonsai because they want to buy themselves a nice tree. Then this is the kind of tree that you should have. They buy this and keep it. Okay, but the insider, the bonsai crowd that I know, they don't want that. They want a tree where they can put their hand on, which they can change, and they can say, I made that tree. They want to buy what I call raw material. So for them, that would be raw material. It's an insult, yes, but it's they would say, yes, it's raw material, but there's better raw material than this for this kind of people, which is a lot of movement, and then they can be playful and do all sorts of stuff. So anyway.